I've been here about 4 hours playing Scrabble and visiting,
This is
enjoying
Daphne
her
talking.
fruitcake and lefse, and she has the house decorated up just beautifully. A tree trimmed on the table here that Marlon had given her with little twinkle lights on. And she's got tinsel and reindeer on her television, and tinsel on the drapery and on the bookcases, and little trees of various sizes that she had made in school years ago, set up on the shelves. And everything looks really Christmassy, and her fruitcake and lefse was absolutely delicious. At first she felt really satisfied over her telephone Christmas visit with you, and I was unable to persuade her to do any talking on this tape because she said later on she'd make a tape of her own. However, now she has decided that she will do a little visiting, mainly discussing some of the early Christmases out in Skyme. And I think that you'll enjoy hearing again the different fun times they had out there when she was little. Margie has just called and said they'll be down tomorrow. I guess the girls had dates tonight or something, so they didn't come down. But tomorrow, well, she hopes to get down, and then I hope to get Barbie and Lily too to say hello to you all, and of course Margie's looking forward to a little visit with you on this tape. I don't know what Mama's doing right now. She's gone with a flashlight, whatever she's investigating in the other part of the house, and the dogs are following her because they don't want to let her out of their sight. Anne Marie got them each a doggy toy, and they've been having a big time here with their new toys. Just like a pair of kids, actually.
And then she never went to school again.
Mm-hmm.
And so she kept the book, though, but she finally gave it to me.
Now, you were telling me about that first Christmas.
Oh,
remember? Yeah.
Yeah, so that's the first Christmas celebration we had of its time, as far as I can remember, and I guess I remember it all right. Anyway, we went down there on the pond, and we had a great time. We'd had, I don't think we'd had anything to eat before we went, but when we came back, we took whatever there was left. The old folks hadn't taken quite everything. And the apples that Lydia had brought over were upstairs. Mother gave us each a slice of one apple. I don't remember what happened to the rest of the apples, but there must have been at least 6 or 7 in the bag.
Mm-hmm.
And that's all we ever saw. We never got a hold of any fresh fruit out there, you know. But in the summertime, there were a lot of blueberries and some wild strawberries and wild raspberries we could get a hold of, you know. So we did have that.
Tell about that ride that they picked up on the river.
Well, I don't know what you'd call it now. It was a sort of a whirligig. The big boys had made it, Andrew and Seaver Haugen, and had made it, and they had made a hole in the ice and put a strong post in there and then frozen it down, you know, so that it was absolutely secure. And then at the top, they had a kind of some sort of a rigmarole. They had another pole they put in with a boat and had oiled it so that they could go round and round. Then they had a place where they could walk, you know, they chopped steps in the ice, and room for two to go side by side. And of course that was just a short piece on the upper side that they pushed, so that then the long piece went way out, and there was a tiny little sled fastened to it, just barely so you could get on it and hang, you know. It wasn't made too secure because they had no such plans.
Mm-hmm.
But anyway, I know I got a ride on it, and they went, you know, they went with a comfortable pace at the top, but the outer was such a far distance out, you know, that it went so fast because it was so far away from where they were, you see. It went about 100 times almost faster than they did. Anyway, we went running around, and then and when I found I couldn't hang on any longer, I let out a yip, and they slowed down, let me off, but Emma and Jenny Lurkin, they wouldn't do that. They just kept going faster and faster, and the girls finally had to let go, and they went whizzing over the ice just like a bunch of wet mop rags. They whizzed up into the snow. But they thought that was just fun anyway, and the boys, of course, they're kind of mean, you know. They always were that way with the Lurkin girls, the Halvin boys were. I don't know what the reason for it was, but they were that way anyway. And anyhow, we stayed down there until we all got pretty cold, and then we went home. Alton had skates, and he was skating around, and Henry and Walter, I don't know just what they did, but it was Seaver and Andrew and Elias Muspec that were doing all this mischief, making it go. But it was a lot of fun, though, while it lasted. Only later on it snowed so much that you couldn't use it. Well, anyway, the whole neighborhood was there then, and Mother led in singing Norwegian songs. There was one that I remember. Evans, jeg så glad uti, for Jesus bön, talet stjärnor som så, och ängeln sang så skön. And I am so glad each Christmas time, because then Jesus was born. Then the star shone like a sun, and the angel sang so sweetly. That's what it means. And then there's other verses, but then I don't remember them so well. Anyway, when I first taught school out at Monaska, I taught the children to sing that song in Norwegian, and the parents were so pleased by that, because nobody else had ever bothered to use the Norwegian language, but I thought in a program it was all right. Mm-hmm. Well, the celebration we had was in the schoolhouse. They built a log structure and plastered it in one single floor of boards that shrank, so that when you got the pencil, you might as well wave goodbye, because it would go through the crack.
What year was that?
What year? And you never saw it again. Well, anyway, when Christmas time came, Bessie Oswald was teaching. The year before, we just had 3-month school, and George Rasmussen taught that. And I was going to say, he first gave me a first-grade reader to read, and I was sort of insulted about it, because I had known how to read for a long time. And, of course, I really learned how to read, reading love stories that were in, we went up there in 1904. Mm-hmm. And so this would be about 1905. About 1905. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Well, anyway, then I was going to say, he gave me a first-grade reader, and I didn't say anything, but I was kind of shy. But at noon hour, he went over to Paul Williams to get his dinner. And then I took I had the book. Still have this book here. And it's a fourth-grade reader, but it's altogether different from any fourth-grade reader you'd see nowadays. And I just can't find that poem here now. But I remember part of it. Anyway, I had the book, and I was standing there reading this poem. And it was The Fight on the Pass of Del Mar. Gusty and raw was the morning, and a fog hung over the sea, and the gray mist rolling inland was torn by the mountain breeze. No sound was heard but the dashing of waves on the sandy bar, when Pablo of Santiago rode down to the pass of Del Mar. And then it tells about another fellow, a herdsman from Morro, who had traveled the shore since dawn, and the blood was still red on his dagger. Good reason had he to be gone. And the fever was hot in his brain, and the thick, misty wind from the headlands beat thick on his forehead in vain. And then when they met on this high, narrow pass, where they had to high above the water, the one says to the other, back, and then the other one said, not I, said the other in wrath. And then they quarreled there. And then when they struck at each other, and they fell off the mules, they each were riding a mule, and they both fell downward into the waves, and the riderless mules turned homeward from the fight on the pass of Del Mar.
What about the Christmas now that you celebrated in the school?
Yes, but I was going to tell you about this because I right away received the sixth grade reader.
Yeah, the sixth grade reader. Oh.
So you see, I did know how to read it, absolutely. But anyway, the thing was that when Bessie came, she stayed at Mother's at Martin's place with us, you know.
Yeah.
And I had to sleep with her.
Oh yeah.
And Mother, I don't know. I think she just kind of tucked herself in with the boys, so as to make room for Bessie.
Mm-hmm.
And anyway. Of course, Mother went right along up with to Bessie to help her to have a program. I think Mother really enjoyed this very much in herself, you know. And she helped Bessie, and I know we had some Norwegian songs and some English, and she helped Bessie practice, have the kids practice and everything. And so then when the time came, well, of course, you know, we first had to collect money to buy the trees. And that was Emma Lurkin and my duty. So we went to everyone, and I remember Potter gave us $1. And that was quite a bit. Some only gave 25 cents, and they had about 15 kids.
Oh, yeah, well, that's all they could afford.
But anyway, we took what we got. And I don't know how much we got. I can't remember that. But it wasn't much more than maybe $5 altogether. But anyway, for that amount of money, we got a barrel of apples and nuts and candy and popcorn. And we made the popcorn balls at our house. Bessie and I was there to help, of course, and Mother was superintending the whole thing and having the time of her life, I believe, now that I look back.
Oh, thirsty.
Yeah. And, well, you know, there was beautiful trimmings had to be bought for the tree, too, out of this money. And Potter, he saw the angel on the top of the tree, and he asked Mother, he said, could I have that angel on the top of the tree? And he had given a whole $1, mind you. And Mother said, well, I'm sorry, but all those trimmings have to be kept carefully so as to be used again next year. And if we begin giving them away, we won't have anything next year. And, well, Potter, of course, agreed that it shouldn't be taken. But afterward, Mother thought, just think, she said, he gave a whole $1. And I refused to let him have that angel. I should have let him have it. Because the rest of nobody else gave that much. Well, anyway, he never got it. I don't know what became of the angel, but anyway, the next year, Bessie was there too. She taught there 2 or 3 years. And then Emma Larson taught there. And the kids were so mean, you know. They wouldn't practice. And at noon they ran out, and when she went to try to get them in, they wouldn't come in. And I got kind of sorry for Emma, although I was kind of mean too. I put a book on the floor, 2 books, one for each foot, and my feet on the books, you know, because it was cold. And we had to melt snow for drinking water. And Edwin Christensen said, can I lay in the stove? He said, oh yes, you can lay in the stove, I spoke up, but it's going to be kind of, you'll get all covered with ashes. You know, in Norwegian, they say, can I ligge I stoven, which meant, can I put wood in the stove? Yeah. I knew what he meant, all right, but I was kind of nasty, and I enjoyed myself. And anyway, we had to go out, and when we wanted to drink the water, we had to get up and take this big tin dipper, which you could scratch your initials on it. It was covered with greasy dirt. And then we took that out the way, and then fill it with snow and brought it in and let it melt on top of the stove until I could drink it. We had no drinking water other than that. Well, anyhow, then you say, well, what did you do to drink when before the snow fell? Well, there was a little muddy creek running through the kind of a draw there. We used to go over there and get some water sometimes. And nobody worried about water pollution or anything. It was full of rabbit turds, of course, but they were clean. They were healthy.
Healthy rabbits.
But nobody paid attention to the rabbit herd. Well, you know, there were so terribly many rabbits in the country at that time. Now you seldom see one. Well, anyway, I remember one time, then when Martin and all of us went up north to pick blueberries, and Martin, he picked, we got water, and my mother made coffee, and we had lunch, and Mrs. Haugen was along too, and Mr. Haugen, and their boys and us, you know. That's the time that I saw the bear, you know, and I never let Martin know that it was there, because he had his gun with him, and I didn't want the bear killed. But anyway, I thought it was Henry all the time, you know, picking along, kind of I could hear him, you know. I was chattering and talking, and then I asked him something and no answer, so I got kind of mad, and I got up and walked around to look, and here was a big bear sitting with mashed blueberries all over his snout. And I said, I thought you were Henry. And I backed up away, and the bear went the other way. I don't know what became of him, but I didn't go back there. I went to another place to pick. But I didn't go running to tell Martin. I'll tell you that.
No, he was taking care of
No. And then so we got finished with our lunch then, and then Martin says, don't you want another cup of coffee? He said to Mama. Well, I don't care if I do, she said. So he handed her the coffee pot, and it was practically empty, and he poured it out, and it was all full of rabbit turds in the bottom. And my mother, she screamed, you know, she said, oh, Martin, she said, what in the world have you done? Well, he laughed so good, you know, and she says, oh, you just put them in right now, she said. They weren't in there before. She had no sense to know they'd have all been mashed up, you know. And so, of course, they had a big laugh about that. Well, all these things happened while I was still at home before I went down to Wisconsin to go to school. And one of the things I remember, we all got piled into the sleigh. They put hay in it, and then we sat in on the hay and put blankets over us. All of us sat in the sleigh, and we went out to Randine to a dance. And as we were going along there, we always used to sing. My brothers all could sing, and the Haugens were all good singers too. Sarah and Henry, and all of them that were used to going along. And so we were singing Jingle Bells or some such thing, and all that sudden the sleigh tipped over. That was Tori Lurkin's mules we had then. Alfred must have been dragging, because the rest of us just had oxen at that time. And anyway, down over we went, and the boys had to get out and help us up out of the log. We were kind of all wadded up in snow and hay and blankets and so on, and then they had to write the thing. And of course that wasn't too difficult, for they were all grown-up young men at that time, might say. Anyway, then we proceeded on our way to the dance. We had to be picking the hay out of our clothes when we got there. I remember the people out south there were Bohemian, and they were real good dancers, though. There's one fellow there, especially good waltzer, and I always liked to dance with. But I wasn't in love with anybody, although Walter Spur imagined he was, and I remember a lot of things about Walter, but that all broke off in the spring. Of course, you know, Walter was an old singer. He couldn't sing, couldn't hear a tune. Of course, but he was a good dancer, though, certainly. And then there was a fellow named John Crumlebo. I got his picture here somewhere. He was a swell dancer, a real good polka dancer. And Howard Rasmussen. And then there was Alfred Lurkin and Stephen Haugen and Henry Haugen and Carl Haugen and Alton, of course. And Alton was always in love with somebody, but it didn't seem to ever culminate in anything important. But anyway, the girls all liked Alton. I remember Tora, the wrestling girls, Thora and Gina and Hilda and all them. They're all gone now, as far as I know. Every one of them are gone.
from a tape made by Mom where she sings some songs to practice singing, sharpen her hearing, and then she tells about early days with Dad.
Where are my friends of yesteryear, the folks I knew and held so dear, my friends of long ago? Now as I pause and look around, scarce one familiar face is found of those I used to know. So quietly they slipped away, I scarcely realized that they had gone beyond recall. My dear old friends of yesteryear, and now I miss them all. Tender words of love, repeat them again, I implore you. Speak to me of love, and whisper those words in my ear. I adore you. Speak to me of love, and say what I'm longing to hear. Tender words of love, repeat them again, I implore you. Speak to me of love, and whisper those words to me, dear. I adore you. Now, but in the coming years, it may be in the better land. We'll read the meaning of our tears, and then sometime we'll understand. Then trusting God through all I did, and remembering that all I have. Though just that way, still singing praise. Sometime, somehow, we'll understand. We'll know why clouds instead of sun show over many a cherished plan. Why song has ceased when scarce begun. Oh, then sometime we'll understand. Then trusting God through everything, remember He doth hold my hand. Though dark thy way, still singing the praise. Sometime, somewhere, we'll get. Where are my friends of yesteryear, the folks I knew and held so dear, my friends of long ago? Now as I pause and look around, not scarce one familiar face is found of those I used to know. So quietly they slipped away, I scarcely realized that they had gone beyond recall, my dear old friends of yesteryear, and now I miss them all. Oh, how I miss Eva, with her sparkling, friendly way. Always something to laugh about, always something to say. On many a happy occasion I've sat in her kitchen where, sipping coffee, we shared the news with others who lingered there. And now she is gone. I don't know where. They say to a better land. But heaven to me could scarcely be without Eva's welcoming hand. Hunting upon the Sunday morn, 'cause it was against his religion, but he took his gun along. He shot himself some very fine quail and a measly big hare. And on his way coming back home, met a great big grizzly bear. The bear was out in the middle of the road, and he made to him, you see, if he sure got excited and climbed up a linden tree. The bear sat down upon the ground, and the coon crawled out on a limb. As he rolled his eyes to the Lord of the skies, these words he said to him, "Oh Lord, you delivered Daniel from the lion's den. Save Joseph from the lion of the herd, and then free Hebrew child from the fiery furnace. The good book you declare. Now, Lord, if you can't help me, gracious sake, don't you help that bear." Just then the preacher's limb gave away and the coon came tumbling down. But the parson had his razor out before he reached the ground. The grizzly never learned to shave, so he thought he'd go away. But the preacher kept on praying loud, and this is what he'd say. "Oh Lord, you delivered Daniel from the lion's den. Save Jonah from the belly of the herd, and then free Hebrew children from the fiery furnace. The good book you declare. Now, Lord, if you can't help me, gracious sake, don't you help that bear." Now, these last songs, those by Harry Lauder and the preacher and the bear, were in some old phonograph records that we had here many years ago. When the boys went out to California, and Melvin and Alton were in the Army, why, they left the phonograph here, and we used to play them. And after the house caught fire that time, I don't remember just what happened, but I don't think that it was destroyed. And I believe that when they came back from California, because Mother did come back eventually and kept house for Uncle Martin, I think I gave the phonograph back to them. Anyway, no, we haven't had it here. However, these old songs seem to kind of come back to me in memory, and I thought I'd put them down for fun. And then there was, several others too. There's some old German songs that Lena used to sing, and I thought it'd be kind of fun to put them down. One was "Light Blue is Irish, that's why it's so precious to me. Hill Blow is Irish, dear how they so again." And then there was another one about Ach du lieber Augustine. Ach du lieber Augustine, Augustine, Augustine. Ach du lieber Augustine, alles ist hin. Die Geld ist verslaufen, der Weib ist verlaufen. Ah, Geneva Augustine, all this is in. That means, oh dear Augustine, everything is gone. The money is spent and the wife. Well, I've been hot day out kissing, a Morgan half day bed dishes, so Augustine. That means now that young women of the world, today you break the egg into the pan and eat it themselves and tell their husbands, you can eat the dirt, my dear man. And then the second verse is the world's older women. You hear them talk about it in the evening, they know everything. But in the morning, they've met in the bed. In other words, geschissen means it's just about like what you can imagine it sounds like. And then there was another one. Louder by how that mein Strom verloren. Und schon geht nicht heim. Der Weg auf wieder auf lauter Backstone. Und hab me and Strom für my bein. Now, Lauterbach is a place they used to go to dance, Santina told me. And this girl says she lost her stocking there. And without her stocking, she would not go home. So she'd go back to the town and buy her stockings for her feet. And then she'd go home. And those are little songs Amina used to sing. And of course I learned them. I think I could have learned to speak German somewhat if I could have only heard it. But neither Aunt Lena or Uncle Louis. I had a real good time when I stayed out there. It's about, they call it the Crooked Ridge School. I got that job teaching because the teacher they had there just absolutely quit. And the kids were kind of mean, of course. They thought it was smart to be mean. But I got along with them all right. Of course, they had to behave themselves. Well, anyway, I was going to say I used to come into town. They'd give me a horse to drive from Lund, and I'd come into town and do my shopping, whatever I liked on Saturday. And then I could go to dances. There were different fellows around there to take me. I used to go with Tom Shervin. He's dead now, Thomas. Well, anyway, of course, that's long ago. I used to come into town with him to dances in Roseau. And then there was a fellow named Bill Schoonover who took me to dances out around on Crooked Ridge. We went to basket socials and dances out there. It was a lot of fun, really. And the Lunds were very nice people. I enjoyed being with them a great deal. Well, they're nearly all of them gone now. One of the boys, Tom, were the youngest boy, or not the youngest, but the youngest one that was there at the time I stayed, is out here near on the east side of town. He got the home farm. And the oldest girl, Marie, is dead. Anne, I think, is living. And Gladys was born after later on. I never did know her. But anyway, I know Melvin was the one that was born when I went back there once to visit. He's gone, I know. So there's just Herbert and Palmer that living near here. But I always remember their parents. They're very nice people. And had a very nice time there. I enjoyed it so much. I remember particularly the winter that I stayed at Lars Lund. They were cutting wood near the road where we walked. And we'd come along there and they'd be about ready to go home. The winter days are so short here. And then we did a ride home on the sleighs with them. But what I remember particularly are the rabbits. They turn white here in the winter. And you could see 25 to 25 or 50 rabbits at one time here and there, all chewing on the popple bark from the branches of the trees they'd cut down. Oh, I never did see so many rabbits. But you know, nowadays I don't think you ever see a rabbit. They had some kind of a disease and died off. But at that time they were very numerous. I was just sitting here thinking of the programs we used to have in the school out at Skyme. Well, they didn't call it Skyme then, it was just called Golden Valley. And that's the way I remember it best. But anyway, we used to have a program where we'd go around and collect up $1 here and $1 there, and then we'd buy apples and make popcorn balls. Mother always did that, and trim the tree and everything. And of course, there was always the program. But because almost all the older people were Scandinavian, Mother would always see to it that we had some Norwegian Christmas songs. And I remember one particularly that had the melody of Silent Night. And this is the way it went. Glade jul, deilige jul, England glade, nyskjul, shad en valve med paradisgrön, hör dem sjunga med gudesen. Jag ligger bland oss i vår, jag ligger bland oss i går. Julefred, evig fred. Well, I can't remember any more of that now. Now I'm sitting here remembering about the card parties we used to go to here in Roseville. This was in the good old days, of course. Well, we used to have what we call progressive whist parties, and we took turns entertaining. I know we had them here one time, and we had, I forget how many tables now, but we had quite a bunch of people here, and someone came along and caught their foot in the draft of the big airtight heater and jerked it out, and all the ashes out on the floor. I remember that. I had cleaned everything else, but of course it's always something you forget. Well, anyway, I cleaned it up, and we had supper. I had provided salad and sandwiches and hot dish, and of course a lot of coffee. We had a good time. The way the progressive whist party went is the tables were numbered, and the head table, when you got to that, you see there were two couples at each table, and the winning couple moved up and changed partners at the next table. And then if you got to the head table, you didn't change partners anymore. You could keep the partner you came there with. And you was a good whist player. Well, of course, you were sick. Well, then when you had supper, you just usually sat right where you were and ate what you could get a hold of. We had a good time. I can remember just how much fun we had. And then they gave a prize. There was a movie prize, and first prize for men, first prize for women. And I thought it was a lot of fun. But all at once, Eli decided he wasn't going to go to any more whist parties. For one thing, I guess the trouble was I got to the head table quite often, and if I happened to be there with either Louis Monkman or Ray Chapin, of course we'd sit right there and play, you see, until supper was called. He didn't like that. I guess he thought that it was too much fun or something for me. Of course, I suppose I did have a good time. There was nothing foolish about it, but I did enjoy getting out and visiting with people, and I guess he just didn't seem to see us quite the same way. He'd prefer to go downtown, walk around the streets, and sit around in the restaurants or something like that. And so that meant we stay home with the kids. That's the way it went. Well, anyway, at the time, though, we went to these whist parties. You had a lot of fun. I remember we had one over at Chapin's, and Mrs. but anyway, she was a great big fat woman. She came there too, and they had it out at their place too. Oh yeah, we kept down all winter long. And of course I had to leave the kids at home, but I had a lamp fastened way up on the wall. And I let that stay lit and turned it down some. Nothing ever happened, but I suppose it was kind of risky. But that's the way things are anyway. There's always some risk to everything. The woman I was speaking of was Mrs. Bert Bassett. She's been dead for years now.
So it'll hold on.
My loved one may and roses, my loved one may be there. The jewels that others gave me shall gleam within my hair. And even those that know me will think my heart is light. Though my heart may break tomorrow, I'll be all smiles tonight. I'll be all smiles tonight, love. I'll be all smiles tonight. Though my heart may break tomorrow, I'll be all smiles tonight. You said you loved another and wanted to be free. You'd be a friend or brother and talk the world of me. Tonight where lights are shining, tonight you'll be with her love. When lights are shining bright, though my heart may break tomorrow, I'll be all